But
Sure.
that was the implication of some of their remarks. This is mighty technical stuff, Jim, and we're going to try to clarify it in a sound way.
Now, how do you go about doing that?
We'll do it through their representatives in New York. There's never been a communications problem here. We've gone through their representatives in New York, and they go back from there to North Korea, and we get responses, not instantaneously, but over a couple of days.
Somebody might ask, Mr. Secretary, this is such an important matter, why don't you or somebody in the highest reaches of the U.S. government get on an airplane, just go over there and do the same thing President Carter did. Sit down with them and say, okay, what is it you guys have in your mind?
Well, there's really not been the basis for that kind of a dialogue at the very highest levels. And as I say, we don't have a communication problem. There's a North Korean problem. There's a stubbornness problem on their part, but not a communication problem.
But what everybody seems to be saying is, and including what President Carter said today after his meeting, was that the North Koreans do want to talk to the United States of America. The United States of America has no problem with that, does it?
Well, we're glad to talk with them under the right circumstances. The IAEA, that's the International Atomic Energy Agency, has an important role to play here. They're basically the determiner of whether or not safeguard standards have been met. But we're prepared to go to a third round of talks, but only if we don't disadvantage the United States. Only if we can freeze the situation, as President Clinton said. Only if we're sure that there'll be no reprocessing and that they don't refuel the reactor.
But what if the North Koreans say, well, why don't you come and talk to us and we will see if we freeze? Let's talk about freezing. Let's talk about all these things that we want. You're saying the U.S. position has been they must do that first before we talk. They can't be part of a negotiation?
We don't want to have the United States disadvantaged while the talks go on. We think we're entitled to assurance that we won't be disadvantaged while the talks go on.
Now, what is that? I'm not sure I understand what that means, disadvantage.
Well, if they, for example, continue their nuclear program, if they were to reprocess during this period, clearly we would be disadvantaged because they'd be creating more plutonium. We are confident that during the time we've been in office, they have not been able to create additional plutonium. But when they unloaded that reactor without adequate safeguards, that's what caused us to go to the United Nations, because we thought they deserved to have some penalties for that. But now if they put themselves in the situation where they assure us that there'll be no reprocessing and no refueling, and they have a continuity of safeguards, then it's worthwhile for us to have this third round of talks.
And the third round of talks is about what?
Well, the third round of talks is broad and thorough, as we say. Initially, of course, it will be about establishing a non-nuclear Korean peninsula. That's the goal of United States policy. It has been for some time. But in addition, that third round of talks can talk about moving toward more normal relations. We would paint a picture in that third round of talks with the benefits to North Korea and to its people of joining the community of nations, particularly the economic benefits. You know, they're suffering terribly economically now from their isolation. So this third round of talks could show them the advantages of compliance with international standards of various kinds.
Now, all the reports, in fact, we've done programs, we've done reports here on this program about it, that the North Koreans already know what those advantages are. They already want better relations with the United States and the rest of the world, economic, diplomatic, the whole thing. So they don't need, that doesn't need to be demonstrated. Is that correct?
No, I think they need to be told that. You know, they're terribly isolated. I don't think they understand the advantages that they're missing. But I can assure you that they're not likely to get those advantages unless they comply with the international standards, particularly relating to their nuclear program.
Now, speaking of their nuclear program, Mr. Secretary, there are all kinds of reports that the CIA reads their nuclear activity one way, their people in the State Department read it another, the South Koreans read it still another, and there's an awful lot of paper about all of this, an awful lot of analysis from various sources. Clearly, you've read all of this. Clearly, you know what all of the analyses are. What is your own? What does it add up to you as to why the North Koreans would want a nuclear bomb? What do they have in mind?
Well, you know, our analysts are deep into that subject, and I think it's a good idea that there's some differentiation of view among the analysts. We need to have a wide spectrum of views. But I think that for some reason they think they get a certain amount of satisfaction out of having a nuclear program. Maybe they think that This gives them an opportunity to make some sales. Maybe they think it's an opportunity to simply, maybe it's a macho thing with them. Nobody knows that for sure. What we do know is that they seem to be going in that direction, and we need to restrain them from going in that direction.
Are they going in the direction toward wanting the bomb to use against somebody, or use in their minds their own defense, or are they going toward a direction, okay, we've got the bomb now, let's bargain it away, or do you know at this point?
You know, Jim, we can't read their mind on that, but what we do know is that we think it's an adverse development. It's dangerous to the region. It's dangerous to our treaty allies. You know what a huge stake we have in that area. We have 37,000 American troops there in South Korea. South Korea is a treaty ally. We've got huge economic stakes in that region. So it's very important to the United States, and I think it's very important to us to try to achieve a non-nuclear peninsula for the safety of that area and for the safety of the world. And that's what our goal is, and we'll keep on pursuing that goal.
But if the North Koreans, in fact, in a discussion here the other night, former U.S. Ambassador to South Korea, Mr. Gregg, said that his reading of the situation is that what the North Koreans want, they'll give up their nuclear bomb strategy in exchange for a normal relationship with the United States and the rest of the world. If he is right, and that is what they want, is that going to be a problem for the United States?
Not at all, and you know, that's why we've been so patient through this. We've tried to give them every opportunity to say that that's what they want. They've done it. There are a number of problems they have in addition to their nuclear strategy, but I think we can work through those problems if they give us that opportunity, if they give us the basis to go to these third round of discussions. But, you know, the course that they've been on recently is one that was so serious that we thought that we were justified in going to the United Nations for sanctions, and we're going to continue to pursue that while we very carefully analyze whether today's developments mean that there is something promising here. We don't have very many illusions, Jim, about the North Koreans. Certainly I don't, and that's why we want to look at this very carefully. We appreciate what President Carter has done. We welcome some of the things that were said today, but we don't want that to throw us off the track of seeking sanctions unless there is something new there.
Have you talked to President Carter today?
I've not talked to President Carter today. He did talk to some members of our group. I've been in meetings with the President and others today. He talked to Ambassador Gallucci a couple of times today.
He's your point man.
Ambassador Gallucci is our point man on North Korea.
And what did President Carter say about this big issue? I mean, really, the cosmic issue here is, are they willing to give it up in exchange for what? And I mean, what did President Carter come back on that particular issue?
Well, of course, he thinks the conversations today were quite promising, and he feels that we should go ahead with the third round of discussions. But there are some things that we want to have reassurance.
He says go ahead and talk. That's what he's saying today?
Yes, sir, that's my understanding.
And when you said, what do you all say back to him? Wait a minute?
Well, I think if you look carefully at our statement, we said there may be something promising here if they will freeze the situation by not reprocessing, by not refueling, and by assuring the continuity of safeguards.
Now, as a practical matter, Mr. Secretary, take me through what happens now. You say there will be communications between there's no problem talking to the North Koreans, but that's going to be done at a low level in New York? Is that what happens next?
Well, that's going to be done through Ambassador Gallucci and their representative in New York, who transmits it to North Korea. And actually, our principal interlocutor is one of the men who was meeting with President Carter there. So I think that it would not be right to characterize it as a low level.
Well, I take that back, but I'm just trying to understand what. So, and is this going to happen tonight, tomorrow? Is it? I mean, give me a sense for how urgent the next step is, from your point of view.
Well, what's going to happen first is that President Carter will be meeting again with President Kim of North Korea tomorrow, and there may be some further clarification coming out of that. Of course, the North Koreans will have read the statement that we made here today, indicating what would be constructive from our standpoint. So we may get some more clarification there. But the place where we'll really be seeking clarification is through the diplomatic channels. We'll be sending messages back to North Korea asking, did you mean, and so forth.
And that's going to be very direct, very direct
and
stuff.
very prompt.
And meaning what, next 24 hours, 48 hours?
We'll have that message there, I would say, certainly within the next 48 hours.
But just to finish on this one, you feel personally that we may have passed a major threshold here in reducing the tension that was rising on a regular basis up till today?
I'm not in a position to say that, Jim. I am in a position to say that this is a development worth clarifying, and that's as far as I want to go tonight. I feel very cautious in this situation. We're dealing in a very, very important realm here. I appreciate what President Carter has done. At the same time, he was not representing the United States, and we need to try to clarify this through diplomatic channels.
Are you prepared to intervene personally yourself as Secretary of State and talk to the Foreign Minister of North Korea? I mean, are those kinds of steps likely or possible over the next several days?
Well, certainly I would be prepared to do it if the timing was right and the circumstances were right, but at the present time, we don't have the right circumstances for dealing president to president or at the other highest levels. I think we've got the right levels exchanging views on this subject.
All right. On a few other subjects here, Mr. Secretary, on Haiti, what are the prospects now as we sit here on this Thursday night for getting rid of the military government down there? Are they any better than they were a week ago or 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago?
Well, I think the sanctions are beginning to bite on the generals themselves and on the upper classes in Haiti. This new round of sanctions seems to have hit a mark there, touched a chord, touched a nerve. So I think we have a better opportunity. The top people there seem to be perhaps fighting among themselves, which could be productive from our standpoint. So I think things are improving there. And I think as we see these sanctions begin to bite further, that's promising. Also, of course, we have the facilities now so that those who leave in boats can have their claims to asylum examined someplace outside of Haiti. I think that's a positive development that we've been working on for some time. So the situation there is somewhat improved. But we'll continue to put pressure on for the removal of the military leaders and the police leaders.
Discussion still going on about the possibility of military intervention to get those folks out of there?
Our focus right now is on sanctions enforcement and making sure that these new sanctions are as rigorous as we intend them to be.
Finally, Mr. Secretary, there have been announcements in the last couple of days about some changes you have made in the State Department and the National Security Council staff on dealing with Europe. You felt a shakeup was needed in that area, I assume.
Well, you know, when you get a year and a half or so into the administration, it's quite natural, I think, that you might want to realign some of the personnel to move them into positions where you think they might be the most effective. I think there's nothing very unusual about that. Europe is an area of great pressure and I think great opportunity for us. And so I would call these some rather normal mid-course realignments.
Now, the New York Times editorial page today and its lead editorial took those changes and came down really hard, not on you and also Anthony Lake, President Clinton's National Security Advisor. Did you read that editorial?
I didn't read it, Jim. Actually, I started with meetings at 7 o'clock at the Pentagon this morning. It's one of the rare days that I didn't read that editorial.
Well, just to paraphrase, it says that neither you nor Anthony Lake has made a significant impression on the world community. You haven't articulated a compelling vision of the United States' place in the world. You haven't generated confidence that you're helping President Clinton make firm, reliable decisions on foreign policy matters. It's quite an indictment of you and Anthony Lake. How do you react to something like that?
Maybe it's just as well I didn't read that to start my day off this morning, Jim. Yeah. You know, I think we have a good team. I think we're doing a good job for the president. On the big issues, I think we're moving forward. Take the things where we have made real progress. Our relationship with Russia, I think, is on a sound course, thanks to the president's leadership. In the economic area, where I've done a lot of work, I think that President Clinton has really made a unique thrust here to try to push America forward in the economic vision. I think that we've made progress in the Middle East, so I just really doubt the accuracy of that assessment in the New York Times. I think we'll press forward on these big issues, having in mind the interests of the United States, and we're going to keep plugging away at it.
And you personally are going to keep plugging away as Secretary of State of the United States?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right. So, Mr. Secretary, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Still a